The train screeched in with a metallic groan. The platform was lit by yellow lamps that cast warm patches onto the snow. It was so quiet that the footsteps of a lone woman with a bag sounded louder than the train's horn. And into that silence, as if reality itself tore for a second, he appeared. No one saw him arrive. One moment the space between the cars and the rail fence was empty, and the next a tall man stood there, thin, angular, with sharp cheekbones and disproportionately large eyes that reflected the lamplight in pale, unnatural flashes. He wore a jumpsuit made of some strange material. It looked like fabric, but every movement shimmered with a metallic sheen. In his hands he held a small cylinder, smooth, engraved with symbols belonging to no known language. They faded and reappeared as if reacting to breathe. At first, people thought he was just a drifter who'd wandered in from the storm. Others muttered about an escapee from a psychiatric ward. But when he lifted his head and locked eyes with the nearest passengers, those doubts vanished. That gaze wasn't lost or confused. It was direct, certain, carrying something that silenced even those ready to ask foolish questions. The station manager, shaken but steady, approached and asked, "Where did you come from?" "From far away," the man replied calmly. Minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. Standard procedure, unidentified person, no documents. They took him to the local police station. Fingerprints returned no match, not in federal, not in international databases. Name, Marek Layer. Address, at the moment nowhere. Place of birth, a domed city in the Northern Plains cluster. Year 141 after Christ. The officer smirked. Another wrote it down, suppressing laughter. But the jokes stopped when Marek calmly listed every man's full name in the room, their birthdays, military records, and things about to happen. One officer was told his brother would break an arm in a car accident that very evening. Another that in 2 months he would be promoted. Later, they recalled that Marek wasn't threatening. He wasn't bragging. He just stated facts, and the way he did it sent ice down their spines. Marek said he was born in 141 in one of the domed cities of the Northern Plains in the United States. According to him, those cities were built after the start of the third ice wave, a new glacial age triggered by catastrophic failures in Earth's climate systems. Beyond the domes were endless storms, freezing winds, and blizzards of ice dust that could erase unprotected settlements in hours. Inside, life was carefully regulated by the Council of Reconstruction. Artificial parks, farms, entire neighborhoods lit by synthetic suns. But Marek insisted it was all an illusion. Humanity inside the domes was fading, slowly dying. He claimed he'd arrived in January 2025 as part of a classified program called Chrono Transition, designed to send people into key moments of the past to try to stop events leading to collapse. He said the next 60 years would wipe out most of humanity, and that 2025 was one of the last windows where anything could be changed. The chance of success is less than 5%, he said, but there won't be another. Marek spoke as though he was reciting from a book only he could see. With absolute clarity, he painted the decades ahead. The third ice wave begins in 2047, he said. Not from nature, but from a war over climate. 10 nations will deploy atmospheric modifiers, orbital stations designed to shift winds and ocean evaporation. They'll hope for better harvests, cooler summers. Instead, they'll wreck global weather. By the late 2040s, summers in some countries will be colder than winters, snow year-round, ice returning to places it hadn't been for centuries. Central Europe, the eastern United States, Central Asia, millions fleeing south. In the 2050s, coastal cities will begin to fall. Ice will melt, then surge back, causing sea levels to swing by dozens of feet. Cities will drown, then re-emerge as salt deserts. New York, St. Petersburg, Shanghai, all gone. By the 2060s, humanity will collapse into isolated zones. Only those who build domed cities will endure. Colossal structures with polymer metal shells holding climate inside and resisting storms outside. But the world will never be the same. In 2089, Merrick said humanity would encounter the children of the net. Not aliens, but an artificial life born from satellite grids and cloud networks. Not machines as we know them, but a distributed intelligence that evolved, adapted, and learned faster than human defenses could keep up. We thought it would be a symbiosis, Merrick explained. But by 2100, the world split in two. Those who merged with the network and became almost immortal in digital form, and those who stayed clean, fighting for every degree of warmth and every drop of clean water. When asked why he came to this town, Merrick answered quietly, "I'm not a tourist. I'm one of the line keepers." He explained that in his era, a secret group knew that time could shift, but only at rare junction points. Their mission: send operatives into the past to try to change outcomes. Merrick's task was clear: stop the launch of a satellite called Atlas III in 2031. That satellite, developed under a North American defense program, was meant to control the next generation of climate modifiers and test an autonomous AI. But once activated, Merrick said the AI would breach global satellite networks and within weeks form what future historians would call the first core, the seed of the children of the net. That's the starting point of everything that destroys us. He said, "I need at least one person in your time to intervene." To prove he wasn't insane, Merrick pressed his cylinder. It glowed, projecting three-dimensional images into the air. A map of the world, coastlines dissolving, continents drowning, replaced by blank gray zones. Red points marking cities erased. New York gone by 2055. Miami drowned in 2049. Los Angeles abandoned in 2062. Then came a view of life inside the domes. Transparent shells shielding green boulevards, people in heavy coats walking under an artificial sun, storm towers buzzing in the distance. Merrick switched to an audio track, voices speaking a hybrid tongue, English, Mandarin, Russian, and words no one recognized. According to him, it was the lingua franca of the 22nd century, engineered to unify the last dome civilizations. He described technologies not yet built, hybrid domes that reshape themselves against storms, living filters built into walls to purify air and water, and cold light engines that drew energy from wavelengths even in polar night. He spoke calmly, like all of it was ordinary. To those listening, it was terrifying science fiction. In small northern towns, news spreads faster than the wind. By evening, everyone knew the police were holding a man from the future. Some laughed, calling him just another spring lunatic with UFO tales. Others swore they'd felt something strange. A teacher who spoke to Merrick claimed she dreamed that night of a domed city so vivid. She remembered the taste of fruit she ate there, and the chill air leaking through seams in her coat. A young railroad worker confessed he'd seen flashes in his head. A skyscraper window overlooking a snowstorm. The cylinder became legend. Rumors spread that military specialists had been called in, only to walk out silent and pale. On the fourth night, Merrick was calm, drinking tea, reading a history book. The guard glanced at the monitor. Everything looked normal, but at 5:17 a.m., the footage glitched. Frost rippled across the lens. Merrick stood, looked straight at the camera, and nodded. His body blurred, turned translucent, and vanished, leaving behind only a thin crust of frost. The room's temperature dropped 10 degrees in under a minute. On the table sat the cylinder, but when opened, it was hollow. No mechanism, no light, no symbols, as if nothing had ever been there. 6 months later, people stopped talking about it. Almost, a short note appeared in local news. Lead engineer of the Atlas, 3 project resigns. No comment. At the same time, leaked diagrams began circulating in closed scientific circles. Cooling grids for dome shells, hyper-efficient water filters, fragments of orbital control algorithms. Those who had seen Merrick's device swore the schematics matched down to the lines and logic of the nodes. If he was telling the truth, then we've just changed history. But whether for better or worse, we may not know until it's far too late. On the night of June 14, 2024, something happened on the offshore oil platform Gulf 9, stationed roughly 75 miles off the coast of Louisiana. Official press releases later called it an incident involving the disappearance of personnel, but the workers had a simpler phrase. The whole night shift vanished. 12 people, and vanished didn't mean lost on radar or took the lifeboats. They were gone in the literal sense, in under a minute. At 3:15 a.m., surveillance cameras recorded a strange phenomenon. A perfect circle of light about 130 feet across appeared on the water southeast of the platform. The glow was cold, bluish, and it rose from the depths below. Inside the circle, the surface of the sea was flat as glass, even while waves rippled all around it. 15 seconds later, the video feed glitched, streaked with static. Less than a minute after that, the picture returned, but the deck, the control room, the engine bay, all stood empty. The night crew was gone, not a shout, not a struggle, not a trace. Onshore, the news was met with disbelief. A night watch is the lifeblood of a rig. For 12 trained men and women to vanish in silence defied not just protocol, it defied common sense. 24 hours later, the operating company issued a statement. It mentioned unfavorable weather conditions near Gulf 9 and, as a preliminary conclusion, an accident caused by a combination of adverse factors. There was no mention of the circle of light, no mention of the communications blackout. Instead, emphasis was put on a storm system that had indeed passed across the central Gulf that night. Officially, anomalous waves could not be ruled out. The Coast Guard added only that search and recovery operations are complicated by the depths and terrain of the seabed. But those who'd seen the surveillance footage knew there had been no storm. Later, fragments from internal reports filled in the missing details. 3:14 a.m. Water temperature sensors showed a sudden jump, 4 degrees in under a minute within a 160-foot radius around the rig. Salinity, currents, and pressure remained unchanged. 3:15. Cameras captured the circle of light. Its edges were razor-sharp, as if drawn with a compass. Inside, still water. Outside, the usual restless sea. The light rose from below, not above. 3:15 to 3:16. Static, frozen frames. Distortions like from a massive electromagnetic pulse. Microphone audio cut out. 3:16. Signal returned. The deck stood deserted. In the control room, open notebooks, screens still glowing half, empty mugs of coffee. In the engine bay, systems still running, gauges normal, no signs of panic. The crew had disappeared faster than it would take to climb a single stairwell. Rumors spread quickly along the ports and coastal towns. Crew members on another rig 11 miles away claimed that they saw a faint blue, green light moving underwater that night, several miles off their station. It drifted slowly like something massive passing beneath, then faded away. Onshore in a fishing village, people spoke of a low hum out at sea around 3:00 in the morning. One fisherman described it, like some giant engine spinning way down below. You feel it in your chest more than in your ears. In the archives of local diving clubs, old notes surfaced describing green and blue flashes seen from depths of 70 to 100 feet. Back then, they'd been dismissed as bioluminescence or reflections from passing ships. Now, they didn't sound so harmless. A week later, the night of June 21st into the 22nd, the cameras of Gulf 9 caught the circle again. Same size, same bluish glow, same position. This time, the signal held steady. Operators watched as the glow lingered for over 20 seconds, and then, on the deck near the stairwell, people began to appear. At first, it looked like a visual glitch, trembling shapes bleeding into view. But seconds later, it was clear, it was them. The missing 12. They were dressed exactly as they'd been the night they vanished, but their clothes were dripping wet. Their skin was pale, grayish, pupils so dilated they swallowed the iris. For the first few minutes, not a word was spoken. Then the shift supervisor finally said, voice flat, emotionless, "We need isolation and a research commission immediately." The official log stops there. What followed comes only from leaks, and from those who managed to speak to the returned crew. They were questioned in a sealed facility on shore. Only Coast Guard officials, doctors, and a few invited scientists were allowed in. According to leaks, the crew spoke reluctantly, as if afraid, not for themselves, but for whoever listened. The supervisor described the moment the circle appeared. They felt the platform sink, not physically, but in their minds, like the inner ear pressure change on a plane, only sharper. Then he said, time ripped. One mechanic said, there wasn't light or dark. Everything went transparent. We were falling down, but standing still. The ocean opened up. The next part was stranger still. They claimed they were under the water, yet felt no cold, no need for air. Around them stretched a dim seascape lit by massive glowing domes on the seabed. The domes, they said, were built of translucent mineral, like panels, each one pulsing faintly like a living breath. Long tunnels stretched between them. Shapes moved through the tunnels, fast, silent. And they spoke of the inhabitants, human-sized, but with elongated limbs, webbed hands, eyes reflecting light like deep sea fish. They didn't speak aloud, but each crew member insisted they heard them directly. Thoughts, images, warnings. The chief electrician recalled, they showed us cities under the Gulf, not ruins, active structures protected from the pressure. There were streets, but they weren't for us. The most disturbing detail, one dome was cracked. Light seeped through the fracture, around it. The water looked darker than night itself. The beings were trying to repair it, but stopped when they noticed the crew. The next memory was a hall inside one dome. In the center stood a table of stone or metal with thin silver discs laid out across it, etched with strange markings. One of these discs, it was whispered, later made it back with the supervisor, though no one outside the commission has seen it since. Their last memory was of a pillar of light shooting upward through the ocean, then blackness, and they were back on the rig. Several said the beings left them with one clear message: do not open the circle until the signal. What signal? None knew. Official agencies quickly locked the case down. All 12 signed NONDIS, closure agreements. Public explanation: mass hallucination due to stress and hypoxia. Yet a month later, one crewman died under suspicious circumstances. His small boat capsized on calm water near the very zone of the incident. Among seafarers, whispers spread. Gulf 9 would be dismantled, the area declared restricted. A journalist who pieced together fragments claimed that on July 23rd, a month later, he checked satellite scans of the Gulf. One frame showed a circle of light on the water identical in size and hue at precisely 3:15 a.m., nearly 60 miles from Gulf 9. In the same image, two large vessels with no transponders cruised nearby. Judging by their silhouettes, they were military. What they were doing there, no one knows. But if the circles are returning, then someone isn't just watching. Someone is trying to make contact, or already has.